Welcome to our first presentation.
Yes.
Maggie and I. This is Noob Drupal, local stack. So this is a beginner presentation. So if you've been developing for years on end and you know the ins and outs of Vim, this is definitely not your presentation. If you are new to development, or you've been developing for a while and just want to see what other tools are out there, you're in the right room.
So the way we started thinking about this presentation was I went to a sprint weekend and I knew nothing about Drupal. This was in January, to give you an idea. I still kind of knew. But I sat down with Charles and another mentor, and by the end of the day I had a complete development set up on my laptop, and I was like, whoa, I should go figure out what some of these tools do, and I need like several sites, and the more sites I spin up, the more sites I need, and equally the more I need to learn. So we were asked to put this together, and I find it really useful. I found even putting these videos together was really helpful for me, finding out what I didn't know and what I did. So I think, you know, if you guys are looking for that type of intro, then it'll be good. And
this is what we built. And my name's Charles. I am a forever noob. I am continually having to relearn things. For those of you who were here a few minutes ago, I actually forgot the word Hyper-V a minute ago. So if it wasn't for Stack Overflow, I would not be a developer. So if you have any questions, give us just pause, raise your hand. We'll call out to you. We're going to go through, yeah, that's right. So here's Maggie. She Bachelor's of History from Queen Mary University in London. Despite being a noob, she has 3 working Drupal sites and more on the way. I generally refer to her as like the I can do it person. Like she knows like all of these different technologies, and she's like, oh, I'm not an expert. I'm like, but you're talking about like 20 different pieces of software that you've worked in this week. Yeah.
I work for the University of Texas at Austin on the service desk, and so there's lots of things I support and know superficial amounts about, but if there's a project, I'm always happy to dig in and learn more. So that noob development stuff is right where I live. So.
My name is Charles Leverington. I have a Bachelor's of Science of Business Systems Analysis from Rasmussen University. If you haven't heard of it, it's because it's an online college. I am forever a noob, and I fully enjoy making noobs into devs. I actually ran a college class. It was basically Drupal 101 at ACC last fall, and it was a really, really great class, and so I've included some of the information herein. So our agenda for today's session is a quick introduction. We're going to touch on the package management mentality, which is something that as a Drupal or PHP developer, you should really at least have a background in understanding so that you're seeing where all of your software is coming from, that you, as a noob, should never have to worry about actually configuring your programming, because that's what the gurus are for, people that are not me. And then we're going to touch on operating systems, recommendations therein. I have shared the slide deck for these slides if you want to follow along. My Twitter handle is C_Leverington, and I shared it to Texas Camp 2017, so you can pull those up if you'd like the slides. And then after the operating systems, we're going to move into text editors, or IDEs, which is Integrated Development Environment. And nowadays, with the exception of like Notepad++, if it's a text editor, it's probably also capable of being an IDE. So I mashed them together. And then we're going to move into choosing your environment. We're not going to give any, you should do this in this session. This session is more about, here is what tools are available. You should look at your project, look at your needs, and then decide what to use from there. And then we'll have a short question follow-up and closing remarks. Anything else?
No, I think that covers it.
Awesome. All right. Overview. Oh, hey, look, I even had a shortened URL. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's useful.
That's useful. There's a dazzling array of options on how to get started in building on the internet in Drupal. Some are easier, some are more complicated, some are turnkey, some are not. One of the ones we will talk about today is Calabox, which is turnkey. You literally download it, install it, and it works. Good Lord, that didn't exist when I got into web development. Whew. So in this session, we'll explore some of the more user-friendly options for creating and developing on the local stack. This is the old version. As noobs, as new developers, and we're becoming web developers, this is what we're theoretically supposed to do locally, which is insane. In reality, and this is where it gets worse, this is what we have to look at. We don't going to learn this very quickly, are we? It takes a while to pick up. It takes a lot of background knowledge, a lot of information. Being a web developer is a lot of times a catch-all. You're supposed to do, as Maggie has mentioned, service desk, everything.
And the more you know about these, like the deeper you dig into any of them, the better things get. But when you first get started, you're going to maybe get a site at the end of the day. Like, that would be good, right? Like, that's where we're aiming. Things like continuous integrations. I tried yesterday in that class, and I got about 3/4 of the way there. Like, you know, there's lots of the services mentioned here will get developed as you go along, and will take a lot of practice, and you know that's okay, because there's all these other packages that'll make it so that you can spin up a site much faster than learning every single thing listed.
Mm-hmm. And for comparison purposes on noob to guru, I will always be a noob in my own mind, but like the continuous integration, that's still like that Greek stuff to me. I can use it a little bit with somebody else's scripts, but the important part is knowing where to get the resources to use it, not necessarily how to set it up yourself. So package management. In my mind, package management is all about letting the gurus do the work. There's a whole bunch of really powerful, well-trained experts out there that when they start talking, I just sort of blankly stare. They make stuff, and they're like, here, internet, have it. And then we, as noobs, can use it without actually having to add code anything. So that's, to my mind, what the package management mentality is. I like the phrase, containerize the world. That's one of Docker's mottos, and we're going to touch on Docker here in a bit. For those of you starting in Drupal, you'll probably recognize the first two. Git, or let's say github.com, Drupal.org, uses Git repositories, and that is their prepackaged stuff where you can go get somebody else's work. Raise your hand if you have downloaded a module from Drupal.org. You've used Git, right? So even if you never opened Git, you never used the command line or source tree or anything like that, you've used Git. Because all of the packages on Drupal.org, all of the modules, themes, everything, are actually saved in a Git repository. And so if somebody else makes it, we get to use it. Yay for noobs. Composer uses JSON and to manage versions, right? And so if you want a different version of Drush, right, and you want to move from 7 to 8, what do you do in a composer file? You change the number 7 to 8 and hit save. Because gurus made that possible, and that's awesome. For those of you who are Mac users, there is Homebrew, and they use what's called Ruby and a combination of Ruby and Get to do their package management. And there, yeah, I know I'm not exact on it here. I'm just trying to give it, new version. There is the Yum and the Yarn. I added Yarn at the last minute because it's package management for NPM. If you get into the Node programming, Yum is binaries, so you can say Yum this, apt get that, and you get to get free things that other people have built that you didn't have to work for, which is amazing. Docker does the same thing. You can have a pre-built Docker container that somebody has perfectly programmed and said, this is a Drupal environment, fully configured and programmed. And you go download a copy of it, and you're good to go. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward of configuring it all yourself going from 20 different websites to get Ruby and Node and Composer and all of these things and installing them all yourself, or making the gurus do it, right? So that's where we're headed in this talk.
Yep. During the sprint weekend, we went through and homebrewed pretty much everything. There was a long list of commands, and I was like, I just kept looking at homebrew and going, this sounds like a good idea. But it really helped. Like the number of things you could just install right there in the command line, without having to go find everything. It made it much faster, much faster.
Yep.
But things like Calabox are even faster. So
yeah, Calabox is so broken. If Calabox existed when I started web development, my learning curve would not have been what it was.
Can I just say I'm really happy that you love Calabox?
I love Calabox. I also, hate to say it, I love Acquia Dev Desktop. I just happen to love Calabox more because I love Pantheon. So
We love you back.
that's I'm senior developer at UT Austin, and I begged and pleaded till my boss gave in, and all of our sites are on Pantheon. So
with Pantheon, it was the first time I felt like a superstar.
right.
Calabox up here on the
It's
list.
coming.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
All right, so package management is sort of the direction. Drupal, there was this whole get off the island thing of stop doing the Drupal way when we moved into Drupal 8. And so now we're using this thing called Symfony as sort of the backbone of Drupal. And the idea, just to understand conceptually, is package management when it comes to local development is keeping track of your needs, right? You have a list of these softwares have to happen for me to develop locally. Either you install them yourself, or you use a tool while somebody else installs it for you. All right? Hours of time. If you know the terms, the buzzwords, Ruby, Gulp, Grunt, Drupal, we're on the way. All right, so choosing an operating system. I'm not going to make a recommendation any given way, other than, and you'll see it's like 17, 18-point font. For those of you who were here a few minutes ago, before we started, I mentioned as well, if you're going to be doing PHP development, Windows Home Edition just doesn't work. Okay, it's horrible. I technically got it to work, Acquia Dev Desktop. I actually got a site, I built it out. I used Acquia Dev Desktop and Atom.io. I synced it up to Acquia Cloud. I built the whole site. I used their built-in Git and Drush, and it took me probably 15 times longer than it would have taken me on a Mac. It took me about 15 times longer than it would have taken me on Windows Professional Edition, because Windows Pro has something called Hyper-V, which is this sort of, you can use Docker, you can use all these really cool softwares. If you're going to be working on Windows, they have Microsoft Visual Studio. They have Ubuntu on Windows, which is a little bash terminal. It's pretty cool. And they have Git Bash. And I didn't make any recommendations on that last line of avoiding Windows altogether, but, it's there. Basically, if you use the Hyper-V, you can use stuff like Druid, Calabox, Amaze.io, and sort of sidestep Windows for a containerized development environment. And we'll get into what that is here in a little bit. Operating system, I personally use OS X, which is Mac. Most of the tools for PHP development work on Mac. I haven't seen very many that don't. There are some that only work on Windows, but if it's a web development tool, Drupal-ish, PHP-ish, you can probably find it on Mac. It does have an integrated Unix shell, and there's a lot of cool integrated tools. Linux, I do not have much experience with, so I'll put that up front. Maggie? Yeah.
I'm going to buy a Raspberry Pi soon as part of my ongoing noob experience, but I haven't actually launched
Dude, I have a
anything.
Drupal Pi. Oh, it's awesome.
Okay.
It's awesome. I crashed it. My problem with Linux is, and I think Linux is amazing, Ubuntu is great. It is a full-featured operating system that you can do anything in. I have like the opposite of the Midas touch, and every time I use Linux, I crash it. And I was with a Linux expert. Yeah, I was with a Linux expert, and he's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "You were watching me." He's like, "This doesn't happen ever to anybody." And yeah.
Although
so
this
I
is
have a gift.
capturing an important part of the noob experience, which is being resilient when it breaks. You know,
Yes.
the number of times I have started something and failed, and started and failed, and walked away, and I cut down a tree. I was so frustrated about this.
That tree need cutting down?
Yes. In all fairness, it did. It didn't have to happen at noon that day, but after a million failed installs, I was just... And then I felt better, and I tried some more,
That's what I
and
wanted to
eventually...
know is if all of these tools we're going through are compatible with Linux.
Well,
Or
sort
they
of.
have Linux versions.
I know Amaze.io works in Linux. Since Pantheon's here, do y'all have does Calabox work in Linux? I've never actually looked.
Yeah, it should. Essentially, the things that we support on Mac are tested as well for Linux.
Yeah. Okay. So you know what? Ed Real. Ed is Uber hacker. He's like huge Linux, and he's huge Calabox. So Calabox at least works on Linux. The Acquia Dev Desktop, which we'll get in here in a minute, it is cross-platform, so it's operating system independent. And once you're configured correctly, all of the Docker containered environments, which Druid, Calabox, Amaze.io, theoretically are platform independent, with the exception of don't use Windows Home Edition. Like, I can't stress it enough, that laptop that my son is watching YouTube on right now, it is a really highly awesome laptop I got from Dell, and it's really powerful. I tried to develop in Windows Home Edition, and I wanted to throw it out the door. And then I got Pro. And then it worked. It was great.
Okay. He's
So-
talking about your computer, not you.
I was talking about the computer. Any questions before we move on to text editors? Any questions on operating systems, thoughts? All right.
What's the link to this presentation?
45 minutes. So we have till...
What's the link to this slide?
The link.
Oh,
Oh.
the link.
Oh,
I was like,
if
man, he's
you-
bored already.
If you look at the Texas Camp 2017 hashtag and Twitter, I posted a link to the SlideShare.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool beats. All right, so choosing a text editor. Does anybody not know what an IDE is? How about this? Raise your hand if you know what an IDE is. Yes. Okay. So the difference between text editor and an IDE, which IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, right? And all that means is you can do other stuff. So think like a text editor like Notepad++ or even a Notepad.exe, right? And you want to save a file and then click a command and compile your SAS, right? Your grunt, gulp, whatever. You want to click a button while in your text editor and compile all your stuff and see the changes live. An IDE, Integrated Development Environment, provides a bunch of other tools on top of the text editor. So that's pretty much the difference.
I also threw a link to the slides in the Slack channel. So if you're in Drupal Slack, it's also in there now, the bit.ly.
Yay! All right, so text editors. Who here has heard of Sublime Text 3? All right, that's a lot of hands. Brackets. All right. Atom.io. Haha. Notepad++. Wow, I didn't get any thumbs down for that one.
Like Notepad.
If you go to an HTML CSS class, they're probably going to teach you on Notepad++. My recommendation is figure out what your project is and move from there. If you'll notice that Sublime Text 2 and 3 and Atom.io actually show up twice because they're both technically IDEs, although out of the box they're text editors. It's kind of like Drupal. They support plugins, they support modules. Out of the box, they're both text editors.
Even
Add in a few things and they're IDEs.
to the point of like being able to compile for like Atom, for example.
I know Sublime Text 3 does, and I know that there is a compiler project
Okay.
for Atom, but I haven't tested it.
Cool.
But there is like the term 3 integration is like actually works awesomely now,
Yeah.
and I'll showcase that here in a minute. So Atom's made a lot of progress in the last 2 or 3 years. Brackets, for those of you who used to know what it was when it was a paid program only for Mac, it is actually free and platform independent. So that threw me off guard. Atom.io. I call it a noob editor. Sublime Text, you have to do a lot of configuration and add this package, add that package. It's very lightweight as opposed to Atom.io, which is a little bit heavier. But it's pre-configured out of the box. Like, it has all of the things out of the box. And you can add a few programs in to make it pretty amazing. And just to give you an example of what Atom.io looks like. So I've added a few packages, and so if I hit these buttons here, and that one, I have a live preview of Markdown files. Right?
For the recording, do you want to mention the...
Oh, yes. So, thank you. So, Control-Shift-M with the right app installed, and it does the plugin files. And the slide actually has a list of apps I have installed, including Control-Alt-Right with iTerm3 integration. So, and it will open it up in the directory of the project you have open. And so if you go and open a new file, it's still there separated. And so it's made a lot of progress. It's grown a lot in the last few years. Let me go to present. In my experience, it does have a higher CPU RAM usage than Sublime Text, even when you fully configure Sublime Text. And that might be because Atom.io works better out of the box. So that means it has a lot of more built-in features. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And Sublime Text is very, very lightweight until you add things on and configure. Questions on Atom.io before we move on?
Yeah, Atom is also JavaScript based under the hood.
Yes.
So it runs a little slower because of that.
Was it... Hold on, I'm trying to remember what language it was in. It was in... It's the same software Slack was built from. I can't remember. See, this is why if it wasn't for Stack Overflow, I wouldn't be a developer. So, Atom.io is really cool because to get it going, you can be up and developing in about 10 minutes. You download it, you install it, you go to File, or in Mac it would be Atom, install shell commands. Once you do that, open up a terminal, and you could say apm install autocomplete PHP. You now have an autocompleter for PHP. Apm install get time machine. You now have you now have Git integration for your Atom.io. Apm install linter and linter PHPCS. So if you're using your debugging tools, or you're trying to keep track and have solid PHP. And there's another slide here in a couple that has a link to Chris Martin's GitHub repo that has a ton of instructions on how to set up his local environment, which is really, really cool that he shared it out. It actually has configuration instructions for Atom.io that are Drupal specific. So you can go in and say, give me a linter to check Drupal code and make sure it's clean. So it's really cool. There's a mini map on the right-hand side. There's the term 3 that I showcased a second ago for the terminal integration. Atom Beautify, you won't notice many of the things it does, but it kind of smooths out a lot of the weirdness. Not really weirdness. It makes it more crisp in a lot of areas. And then the multi-wrap guide sets it up to where you can have a certain width. Like Drupal says you have to have 80
characters.
80 character width, and so the multi-wrap guide lets you set, don't do this. So I definitely recommend checking out that slide. Yes, sir.
The Git integration, does that allow you to check in and out branches right within the IDE?
I'll be honest, I've never tested that.
For the
Do you wanna
most
go
part,
first?
I use it as a reference to be like, am I on this branch? It shows you if you're on master, and if you have continuous integration hooked in, you can also see if the last test or the last build on that branch passed or failed.
Okay. It does also, and you can see it right here, it actually tracks changes, like new files, changes to files, so that you can see what is staged, unstaged on changes.
Over here, do you want to point out the mini map? Because it's there.
Oh, yeah, and there's the mini map over there.
Okay.
So the mini map is like this thing over here, so I can click there and know where my file is. And so if your linter is on, and you know that, it's like right there, you can click on it. And the linter is currently not working on my machine. I haven't figured out why. So, but it'll have the linter line going down here, but it'll also have it in the mini map. And so you can say, okay, I know there's an error right there, and you can go right to it. I unfortunately don't have the linter on because, like I said, I broke it the other day because I was trying to configure it for React, and now it doesn't work for anything. I'm a noob, so I'm noobed at this stuff. But yeah, there is a lot of really great packages for Atom, and I didn't go into this with Sublime, but Sublime has even more really cool tools. Just keep that in mind. Sublime Text 3, again, very comprehensive out of the box, but it does require a little bit more configuration at the onset. And in my experience, it's faster than Atom.io. I can't make a comparison to Brackets because I didn't know Brackets got rebuilt from the ground up from the last time I saw it 4 or 5 years ago. So there's that. You play with Brackets, right?
I do like Brackets. With any of these, it's like with the text editors, not the IDE part of it, but the text editor, it's also a matter of what you're comfortable in and what you feel like you understand. And that's a big part of it. Like with Brackets, the first time I was watching Linda trying to figure out HTML, they said go download Brackets, so I did. And now I'm like, ooh, Brackets is friendly because that's where I started. But, it's when you get to a contrast you like, when you get to the color scheme you like and all that matters a lot. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think if I don't cross it through the slides, remind me to get the link for the Mac OSS setup guide by the end of it, because I use that every single time because it helps set up a crisp, colorful, beautiful, easy to read everything for your terminal, for your text editors, everything. It's pretty awesome. And now we have a showcase where we will actually run through very, very quickly what Sublime Text looks like. So I had to speed it up because I didn't want to run over time. So it's very clean, very pretty. I've got all my colorizations in there. You'll notice the text files, if it's pure text, it's white, but if you open a YAML file, it showcases exactly how your text is configured.
Things
And-
like the line numbers there are really helpful when you're trying to debug and you're like, oh, there's a problem at line 114 like yesterday. That really helps. So
Yeah, and I've seen some developers that have it so amazingly configured that they click a button and it compiles, and then it shows all of the errors, and then it's Sublime Text. You can go the world in development. Let's see. Yeah. So there is the Mac OSS setup guide and the references of what I do when configuring Sublime Text. I actually use both of these links, and I sort of cherry pick the best things therein. So part of being a noob, like I said, is letting the experts do the work and just, basking in the glory, right? Right? Brackets. Maggie, I'll let you touch on brackets.
So there's a demo on this one too, right?
Oh, did we?
Yeah, you did. There
Oh,
at
no.
least an image.
Good job.
So There's several things I like about brackets. The live preview is probably my favorite, where it actually opens in a browser, so I get to see what my code isn't doing, and when I highlight a line, it'll show me what that line looks like specifically. So I found that super helpful. I just found it easy to navigate. It made sense right out of the box, and it also it suggests your end tag. So if you're kind of lazy about your end tags, it's great.
Nice.
Yeah. So like start your p tag and then
Auto-completer.
yeah, exactly. So it's just especially when you're first starting, it's kind of helpful to have that little push up.
All right. Any questions on brackets? All right. Like I said, I can't comment on brackets. Notepad++, I had to include it because, you know, things. Out of the box, any language, any OS, very low learning curve. If you're going to be a full-time web developer and that's your thing, I would recommend against Notepad++, simply because, yes, it has an easy learning curve, but you're working in a software that is going to provide obstacles to doing your work. Even though, like, every HTML, CSS, anything class I've ever seen, they're like, you should download Notepad++. I'm like, the instructor doesn't even use it. PHP Storm. Okay, so fun fact on PHP Storm. It's so a part of what I do that I did not even notice until I got here this morning that we had completely left it off the slides. So PHP Storm is an IDE. It is not a text editor that can be an IDE. It is an IDE. And that is important to note because it has a lot more memory usage than Atom, Sublime, anything else you're going to use. PHP Storm does take up a lot of your computer's processing power, but it integrates with everything. Bower, Vagrant, Gulp, Grunt, Sass, pretty much anything you do as a PHP developer, Drupal or not, PHP Storm integrates with it. And it integrates very well. There is a really long set of instructions put out by JetBrains and a very long set of instructions put out by Lullabot of how to have Drupal plus PHP Storm. The cons of PHP Storm, however, is it is paid, and it is paid with a 1-year license. So you actually have to pay for it each year. It used to be a one-time fee, and you'd have to pay if you wanted to upgrade. But no, it's a pay each time license. It indexes anytime you make changes to a version control file. So that can sometimes, like, you can't actually do anything. So if you open up PHP Storm and you're going to apply an update and move on, and it'll tell you, yeah, no, you can't do that. And you can't do that because it's still indexing. It is not out of the box like Atom.io. You can't just run through APM install this, APM install that, and you're good to go developing. It does take a longer setup time, especially for the debugging tools. But once it is set up, it is really super awesome, powerful. Let me see. Let's see if I may not have an updated version. What are you doing? PHP Storm. That's weird. I don't have PHP Storm installed.
I don't pay for software.
That's a new thing for me because it was installed last week. I don't understand that one. Okay, well, I can't showcase PHP Storm.
But the documentation is there, so if you guys want to look into it, there's a lot more information available.
Yeah, I highly recommend. If you're going to be junior, senior developer, Drupal developer, if Drupal developer is your job title, if it is what you're going to be doing long term, full time, this is what you do, I highly recommend looking up some tutorials, looking up past DrupalCons, however you want to go, and learning PHP Storm because it has a lot of really cool functionality. You can grab something from your file browser and paste it in PHP Storm in the location you want it to go. It will paste it, and then it will pop up and say, would you like to add these to Git? Yes, I would. and now it's staged and ready for you to commit. So PHP Storm integrates with like everything, out of the box, sort of.
Surprised you all don't have Coda out there. Coda's a huge event. Yeah.
Which one?
Coda.
Coda?
Coda. K-O-D-A. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yep. It's pretty.
Popular one amongst PHP devs.
It is.
And it'll do Git.
It's C.
No, it's
Oh, see? Oh, sorry. Coda. Sorry.
Coda.org or panic.com.
And
Aha, so apparently Coda is a important one. Ooh, it's pretty too.
it's quite fully featured.
All right, well, I will research it and get it added to the slides.
When we're talking about Coda, I just switched to it. Does it have like the pre-prediction, like Sublime text? Because I can't figure out how to make it work. Like if I start typing, like
They
how to
didn't
program
used
things.
to, but my understanding is in Coda 2 they do. In fact, that was one of the reasons I personally never moved to Coda. But
Yeah.
I'm not a back-end dev. All my back-end dev friends love Coda.
It's driving me crazy. But
But yes, my understanding is it doesn't touch the
That's-
edition.
ooh,
It
that's
doesn't out of the
pretty.
box. It's definitely
It's a
plugin.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Also at 99 bucks.
Yeah, I'll be honest, that's why I use Atom.io so much, is because it's free. And up until last spring, I did contract work. So, like, all of my work was out of pocket. So I went with all the free tools I could. So I will definitely look up Coda. I may just, like, hit you up and say, hey, help me make some slides. Because I want to be complete. I want this
Yeah.
to be reusable.
We do have people at
And,
UT who
technically
were using
Sublime
it.
is paid too, isn't it?
Sublime asks for donations. You can use it. It has a
Not Max.
unlimited trial period.
So you pay.
Yeah, the Sublime Text 3 is unlimited trial period. I highly recommend paying it just because you're helping something that's an amazing product. And then the link right here, I mentioned Chris Martin's GitHub repository for his setup guide. And I use this, he uses this, a few other people I know use this. And you literally, if you're on Mac OS X, you can literally just walk down the file doing all of these things, and you're ready to go at the end of it.
This is what I was running when we were having that sprint day. It was like, here, go to this page, and tell me if you hit errors. And it was great.
Yeah.
And
everything you need to know about Vim is right here. :Q is how to get out of it. Raise your hand if you've heard of Nano. Nano, okay. So for those of you new development, and I know this is like technically not part of our stack or anything, but there is a software called Nano, which you can use instead of Vim, right? And so you can have it as your default text editor. So if anything randomly throws you into text editing in your terminal, you can set up Nano to go instead, which you can actually get out of because there's on-screen instructions. Sorry,
yes, word of warning about using Vim. The
Yeah,
look
so-
I got from other developers yesterday when I was using Vim, and they were like, "Why? Why?" And I'm like, "But I remember the command to get into Vim." But yeah, they were like, "I don't know how to use things on that. Google it. I don't use Vim, so just throwing it out there."
Yeah, so
It's-
Nano, look, on-screen instructions, right? So you hold Control and you hit X and you're out.
show them Vim. You know how to get
I-
out Vim.
I-
And then you don't
no,
want to?
yeah,
no,
no.
it
Yeah.
doesn't happen on yours.
I'll get stuck. Somehow, some way, I'll get stuck.
Oh
'Cause
yeah, your
Vim-
escape key might not work.
Yeah.
It's a new map.
Don't touch Patrick Coffee, but as far as I'm concerned, Vim was invented by people who hated other developers trying to become, developers. Like,
It's not that bad.
it's-
It's not that bad.
you should see Patrick. He does magic in Vim. And I'm like, you just can't get out of it, right? That's why you're this good at it? Because you can't act in it.
You've never left it.
You've never left?
It's the Hotel California. It's not that bad.
So,
It gets better.
Yeah,
Not that I can't do magic tricks. It's not as bad after a while.
I've told that coffee. I've been told that coffee and light beer are you get used to it, right? And I've never done coffee or light beer, so I have a feeling Vim leads to it. All right, so let's move on. Choosing an environment, buzzwords, and we've already touched on a few of these. All right, so here's things I wish people would have told me when I first started. VMs is virtual machine. So it basically, you have your computer, you log in, right? So if we pretend that this floor is your computer, a virtual machine is a fake computer on your computer. So if the virtual machine crashes, like Linux does for me every time, it's okay, right? Because your computer didn't crash, the virtual machine did. So it's a hardware virtualization, so it can pretend to be other systems. It can pretend to have certain features, integrations, software, whatever. So if you have PHP 7 installed locally, you can have a virtual machine to test out PHP 5, PHP 5.3, and so on. If you're using 5.3, can I recommend you don't? All development software is hard installed on the virtual machine. So for example, unless you're using some sort of versions software on the virtual machine, you're only going to have one version of PHP. You're only going to have one version of Apache, and so on. So containers is a concept similar to virtual machines. But instead of being an entire huge fake computer, it does a whole bunch of fancy technical terms I'm not going to try and get into to pretend and then create this little box. And in that little box, it runs containers. And each container is a software package. So in theory, if it's developed well enough, you could be running multiple versions of PHP for testing. In theory, if it's configured well enough, you could have 7 different websites, all in this set of containers, right? Generally, it's going to be like Linux host, Linux guest. And so when it spins up, your user is the admin on the virtual machine, generally. All development software is soft installed on the containers. So if you, for example, change the version in the configuration file and hit save and say refresh containers, it's going to shut down the PHP version and then bring it back up under the new version. So it's not hard installed, soft installed. Local development, and this is kind of the 3 methods. Local development, where you're not using VM and you're not using a Docker system. Everything is hard installed in your computer. So if you install the wrong version of Ruby, you need to uninstall it and install the right one. If you install the wrong version of PHP, you have to manually uninstall it and install the right version. So there's no virtualization, but generally you can get support from package managers like Homebrew, Yum, and apt-get.
We are quickly running out of time.
Aha! We've got 15 minutes left, so we gotta hurry. All right, so unfortunately we're not gonna be able to go through all of these, but I have them all linked here. And I'm gonna talk really fast because we have like 15 minutes left. So, beginner, intermediate, advanced, expert. And you'll notice that Calabox, for example, is in all 3. MAMP Pro technically should be in all 3. Yeah, there it goes. So MAMP Pro is in all 3. Now you'll notice that I had MAMP Pro under beginner, whereas MAMP and MAMP Pro are under intermediate. If you're going to use MAMP, if you're going to develop locally and you're not going to use Calabox or something like that, pay the money and get MAMP Pro. All of the really cool features that used to be part of MAMP are now in MAMP Pro. And so if you want to use those features, you have to manually configure it. And it took forever, and there might have been some violent words on my part until I finally got MAMP Pro. So for a beginner, MAMP itself is not really beginner. Docsal.io, I listed it under beginner because it stated that beginners can use it. I cannot confirm that because I haven't really had a chance to really dig into it. Calabox and Acquia Dev Desktop and Drupal VM, all 3 of those are literally turnkey development. You download it, you type some commands, you follow some instructions, and you are online and developing. And that did not exist when I got into web development 15 years ago. Let me tell you. Learning curves are crazy. Did I miss anything?
No.
Cloud9 and Platform.sh is actually developing online. You would do your development and interactions and integrations and everything like that in the cloud, which I have heard phenomenal things about. I've never actually had to develop with other people. So, I mean, I didn't use it. So I can't really comment on Cloud9 or Platform.sh, but I have heard amazing things about both of them. So, Acquia Dev Desktop. Very quick intro. You can click a button, say give me a site, and you say new site. You pick which one you want to install. You pick your directory of where you would like it. And you hit OK. And you name your site. And this is literally like all it takes. For those of you who have the same like heartache I did of WAMP way back when, trying to learn for WordPress, this is just not fair. Like, this is just not fair. I don't know. For if you are using Acquia, it has phenomenal integrations with Acquia Cloud. And so like PHP Storm, Acquia Dev Desktop, that's almost all you need.
This is it. You just go set it up.
And that's it. You're online in like 5 minutes. You click a button, you've got Drush and Git.
When I was a kid.
And you don't have to like have things like setting connection details from Acquia every time you spin up a new site.
Okay, so you can spin it up locally and then click a button, and if you're logged in for your Acquia Cloud network, you can click a button and say add to Acquia Cloud, and it will actually generate. It will send a post request or something, generated on Acquia Cloud, and then sync it up. So you can build it entirely locally, click a button, and then send it up. Or alternatively, if you built it on Acquia Cloud or somebody else built it, you can log in and then pull it down.
So the destination isn't necessarily attached to the instance.
No, not initially. All right. So pros, turnkey Drupal development, PHP development environment. So you can technically do WordPress, although it's a little bit harder. Acquia Cloud integration. Cons, it has a set version of Drush. So whatever version of Drush is on Dev Desktop, that's the version you're going to be using. So if you're trying to use an older version because you have to connect to somebody's old Drupal 6 site, you can't. File permissions get wonky every now and again, and it's very limited. And because it does not natively support integration tools like Gulp, Grunt, or Circle CI right now, I have a feeling it will very soon, simply because continuous integration is the future. Honestly, it may even right now, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it. So just say that. And it does not play well with others. So if you have Dev Desktop installed, and then you install like Drupal VM or Docker development environments, every now and again, like Dev Desktop will mess up your PHP versions between the two. It's really weird.
It does that with amps.
Yeah, AMP stacks too. It was very frustrating. All right, so Calabox. Turnkey Drupal and WordPress development. It has full Pantheon integration with multi-devs, so you can choose your multi-dev. It requires some config tweaking for Composer every now and again. And if you want to do integrated workflows, it also, like with GitHub, it also has some issues. So very fast. All right, so check this out. This is all it takes to get a new site. Click a button, type your site, hit new. We're up. Like, it took almost no time at all. You can obviously tell I have this fast forwarded. It's not quite that quick. Acquia Dev Desktop can take 5-8 minutes to spin up on a good system. Calabox can take about the same time. It's been faster lately, so they've been optimizing it.
There's a new version.
Oh, there's new versions coming out. Check that out.
But another note is that this local instance also has whatever services that are available on Pantheon, like Solar and Redis.
Yeah.
It does complete parity with production environment with zero effort.
Yes.
That's cool.
And that's actually a pro con I should add on the Dev Desktop, because Dev Desktop does not have the Redis and the Apache necessarily. You can sort of get Solar on there, but it takes some work. And it's fast. There's when I first found Calabox, I wanted to be that starting as my first time as a developer, because it is the first true turnkey anything I found where you just install it and start playing. It was not fair. I know that sounds odd. Doxal Amazy.io. I did not have a chance to really actually get it going, and it's almost entirely command line. So, beginner, intermediate, advanced. I would not recommend it unless you have a mentor, unless you have someone that you can ask questions to and get answers, because it is an actual full environment that doesn't necessarily have the really cool graphic user interface you're going to find in Calabox. But if you're Austin local, Amazy Labs is hereby. You can talk to them at nights. So sessions to visit for Docker development, if that is the direction you're going. If you are going from beginner to intermediate or intermediate to expert, they have today at 2:45 Docker in a Flash, Drupal development with Docker. I highly recommend it as an add-on to this one, even if you're not planning on going, because the concept of the YAML files and putting together some configuration files and moving on and just being done with it is really cool. And then this is what you should know about containers tomorrow at 2:45. I also included a couple of links. Drupal VM. I am a huge fan of Drupal VM. I'm going to put that right up at front. Drupal VM is awesome because you can say, give me this, and it gives you that. And you don't have to control or anything. So novice to expert, so you can go from beginner to end, pull all the way through. However, as a con, the best usage requires NFS, which, for example, ISO, the Information Security Office here at UT, does not support. So I got my computer shut down when I tried to use it. And then I was like, but I'm behind 4 firewalls. So no, I couldn't use it. But I'm a huge fan of it, so there you go. It also does not play well with others. Aqua Dev Desktop, and sometimes, Druid. Doxal, when it used to be Druid, crashed my Drupal VM. So there are some playing well with others. There is a slight learning curve, but there's great documentation. I went ahead and included the instructions of step-by-step. Do all of these things to play for OS X, for Mac OS X. Do all of these things in that order, and you will be online once you finish typing Vagrant up.
So I tried to TLDR, too long didn't read the instructions in the README, and I kept hitting these roadblocks, and so that's where these came from. Is I sat there and tried to install a Drupal VM on my Mac. I was like, wait, Charles, what do you mean I've got to do this? Oh, that's in point 3. So we just thought if we put them all right there in the slide, it's super easy to get it up and running.
All right, so you're seeing me copy the default .config.yaml and just changing it to default.yaml, right? Copying the make file and just taking out the Word example. And you'll notice Drupal version, right? Vagrant IP address is that. Vagrant machine name is that. The host name to type into your browser is this, right? Your local path to your synced folders is this. The memory usage is that. So you literally say, do all of these things and build it in this way and build it for me so where I don't have to try and fight with it. That's why I love Drupal VM. I think I'm going to have to skip parts of it because we're down to 5 minutes.
But it is in the slides, so if you want to go through and you're trying to install this, you can watch this while you run those commands, and it should all work.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
As you can see, there's bits and pieces. You can add extra packages. So if I were to type nano right there and hit save, it's going to install nano while it turns on the VM. So you type a whole bunch of things, you say vagrant up, it runs through a whole bunch of commands, and then it vagrants up. Mine actually failed twice because I had the other yum package, and it kept failing because it couldn't install other yum package. And then it'll actually take you to a desktop. Da-da-da. Where are you? There we go. And so you can see it will load up by default straight to a working Drupal installation. And you can see all of your MySQL port, hostname, yada, yada, yada. It has adminer, xdebug, pimp my log, and yeah, all of that by default. So it's pretty cool.
Don't forget to vagrant halt when you're done.
Yes, yes, vagrant halt. Learn the commands. Like I said, it's got a slight learning curve. I got to talk quick. All right, so MAMP and MAMP Pro, I already touched on all levels of development. Really, truly, if you're going to develop entirely locally and you're not going to use Calabox or Docker or Drupal VM, pay the money and get MAMP Pro, because instead of trying to manually hand code everything and go grep search to find all of your files and where they might be, it has click button. Da-da-da. So you click a button, you hit new, and then you're good to go, right? Give it a second. So new site, there's my container, give me a database, create it, and then there's a settings files. And this edit template right here, yeah, that feature's not available in regular MAMP.
Yeah,
So if you need to edit those things, you have to edit them manually after finding that.
Well, there's like a whole lot more. Regular MAMP is like all manual.
Yes.
There's none of that stuff.
Yes.
You go in and create all those directories yourself and
Yes, that, yeah.
things in. Or
MAMP Pro, yeah. All right, so bonus. I don't think we're going to have time for bonus. I think you're going to have to look at it later. But it has some terminal tweaks. I highly recommend Bash It to make your terminal pretty if you liked the look and feel of my terminal right here. That is the default look and feel of Bash It, including Git integration. I have some other resources I've listed. I will probably continue to add to them. Keep an eye on the slides in the future. And other tools as well, such as Phase 2's Grunt Drupal tasks and 4Kitchen's Aquifer.io. All right, so I apologize for running a little long. Yeah, we have 2 minutes for questions. Questions? Thoughts? Anybody want to see Calabox happen real quick? Like
Everyone has Pantheon questions.
Yeah, Calabox is, like I said, when I first got into into web development, I had WAMP, and that was it. Or no, XAMPP. It was XAMPP on Windows, and it was a nightmare.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any instances in which you can't use a turnkey solution and you need to manually create an environment? And if so, what information do you need in order to do that? Like, is it project specific? Can you use the same thing every time?
Yeah, I think it's project specific. Like, you know, at Moody, for example, the reason I started going on the MAMP Pro as opposed to Calabox, because at the time, that version of Calabox spun up all of the containers, even when you turned it off. Like right now, this is off. The only thing on is the little bitty Docker system, right? At the time, even if you hit the power button, all of your containers were still spun up.
Yeah.
And I had 7 sites I had to work on daily, so I couldn't use Calabox. But this kind of turnkey solution where I can click a button and see the code, it's really awesome. And if you need to use GitHub integrations, right? So you want to set it up to where when you commit your code and you push it to master on GitHub, it automatically updates your Pantheon site, right? So you want it to hit GitHub first. There are a set of instructions you have to go through to sort of walk through it, because by default, if you're synced to Pantheon, right, by default, it's going to sync directly to and from Pantheon, right? And so like this one here, this is my testing Drupal site. I'll keep in mind this will take like 5 minutes, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. It's actually going to pull an exact copy off of the dev environment on my Pantheon.io. Acquia Dev Desktop supports the same functionality for Acquia Cloud.
This also is not Pantheon specific.
Yeah, it's not Pantheon specific. Like this one here is totally independent. I don't have it hooked up to anything. It's just a site. Over here, add site, you can say, give me something for Backdrop CMS. Give me something for WordPress, Drupal 8, Drupal 7. And it's very fast, it's very efficient, and it does have the file sync. Used to be weird on Calabox. It used to take like a minute, but now it's instantaneous. So once this directory is in place, let's go with Atom. I'll just open it in Atom. So file, open. It's in the Calabox folder, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where are you?
Down further.
Okay. So I'll open this right here. You can see, there it is. You can see the Calabox configuration file. And then if I go to code, you can see my Drupal files. So it's very efficient. It's very fast. I'm totally jealous of my younger self is totally jealous of my current self because
But you wouldn't know all that you know without manually going through it. I think that too, but then I'm like, no, I wouldn't understand all the dev stack if I didn't have to manually figure it out first.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have been willing not to understand the dev stack because, like I said at the very beginning, like this is what it used to be. This is what we advertise to new developers that it is, and in reality, this isn't even all of it yet.
Nope. But the nice thing about where we are now is that you can learn those things at your own pace as you go along with this, which I think is really helpful. As far as not having to really fully understand and have all of that running just to get up and running.
Yep. Yeah. Well, don't let us run into y'all's lunch. Does anybody have any questions? Thoughts? Additions you'd like to see added to the slides? No?
Actually kind of lateral to what, I mean, so you said you're using, you've got all your sites now on Pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
And you're, so what was your reason to not use the like UT Web?
At the time, it was extremely crashy, and doing Drush status was like 5 minutes. It's way better now. It's like 9,000 times better.
It still sucks.
But I also,
It's like that.
again, up until last spring, I was solo, right? I was all of my web stuff was contractor work, and Pantheon versus Acquia. Acquia didn't come out with their free plan until recently. Pantheon's been free all along for development.
Right.
And let me tell you, when I can click a button and create a site, and then click another button and choose my distribution, I'm not having to download anything. That was amazing. If you haven't used Pantheon yet.
Well, also, correct me if I'm wrong, Charles, but it's super awesome for updates, which are super tedious and painful.
Yes, I love
In our
upstreams.
situation where we're managing 46 sites, I mean, updating is amazing.
Yep.
Pantheon really removes a lot of that.
Yeah. The only thing with Pantheon is you can't use multi-site. Out of curiosity, I've never asked this question. Right click on Pantheon. WordPress multi-site.
Yeah.
Yeah, it requires a certain plan, but you can contact support and they'll tell you all the
Requirements. I just I never actually asked that question because I know WordPress is huge in the whole multi-site thing.
Yeah.
Should we go ahead and
Support
stop the recording?
strongly tries to
Yes, we should
direct
probably stop
towards,
recording.
like,